It is 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling the August 8th, 2021 meeting of the Paris City Council to order. For the purposes of this meeting, there is a quorum. The invocation will be given by Mr. Gene Anderson, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Reginald Hughes. Please stand.
May we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you again for the blessings of the day. We just thank you, Father, for everything from the next breath to the next step. We pray for our council tonight as we meet that you would guide and direct them and give them wisdom, Father, to conduct the city's business. Father, we pray for the staff as we do our best, Father, to serve this community, and we pray that all that we do tonight would glorify your name. For I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Item number 4 is the Citizens Forum. Persons desiring to address the council must limit their presentation to no more than 2 minutes. Unless an item is posted on the agenda, the Texas Open Meetings Act prohibits the council from responding to any comments other than to refer the matter to a future agenda, to an existing policy, or to a staff person with specific factual information. Claims against the city, council members, or employees, as well as individual personal appeals, are not appropriate for the Citizens Forum. If necessary, the City Council may convene into executive session under Chapter 551 of the Texas Local Government Code regarding any item on the agenda. The public forum is now open. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Steve Clifford. I live at 2050 Silverleaf Drive here in Paris. I served on the City Council for 6 years, 4 of which I served as mayor. One of the last items that I voted on before leaving the council was to initiate the Charter Review Committee, as we were several years late for our periodic update of the charter. The council selected 11 people to serve on the committee. I believe the citizens who were selected were all excellent choices. 4 of the committee members are former City Council members. These include Edwin Pickle, Derek Hughes, Aaron Jenkins, and myself. I believe that former council members are perhaps the most qualified to understand exactly what's right and also what needs improvement in the city charter. I was surprised to notice that the ordinance set for approval tonight increases the number of members in the charter committee to 15 when the council had already settled on 11. It also specifically prohibits former city council members and former city employees from serving on the committee, even though 4 former council members had already been selected by the council to serve. If enacted in its present form, this ordinance will remove Mr. Pickle, Mr. Hughes, Mr. Jenkins, and myself from the committee. I believe this would be a mistake, as I believe all 4 of us can make significant contributions to the revision of the charter. I also believe it to be a mistake to exclude former city employees from the committee. They also have a unique perspective and could make important contributions to the charter. I do agree that excluding current council members and current city employees from serving is appropriate due to potential conflicts of interest. Whether to increase the number of members to 15 is an open question. I personally think that keeping the number of committee members to 11, as has already been determined by the council, is appropriate. If the committee gets too large, it may reduce its effectiveness. In conclusion, I respectfully request this council to pass the ordinance setting up the Charter Review Committee with the following amendments. Do not prohibit former council members or former city employees from serving on the committee. Also, please consider keeping the number of committee members at 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Ruth Ann Alsabrook, 208 5th Street, Southwest Paris. I'm asking the council to begin planning for construction of permanent bathrooms at Lake Crook. A few years ago, an ad hoc committee was formed by the city with members studying how to best spend grants, or gifts rather, of $110,000 for recreational facilities at Lake Crook. I chaired that committee. Our committee decided that the number one priority was to get a really great playground for Lake Crook. And if any of y'all have been out there, it is a fabulous playground. It is so dang cute. Now, we also wanted permanent bathrooms, because all we had was one kind of wretched little porta potty. But there wasn't enough money to do both. So the city manager assured me that if we had a park bond election that passed, Lake Crook bathrooms would be in phase 2 of the plan. But that didn't happen. Instead, the council decided to build a bicycle pump track, which is great. It's a great asset to the city. But now I'm once again asking the city to consider planning and budgeting for those permanent bathrooms. More people are using Lake Crook because of that playground. I've seen church picnics out there. I've seen family reunions. I've seen kids' birthday parties with bounce houses. In May, I saw school buses full of elementary school kids out there. And the city did upgrade to a couple of porta potties, but that just isn't going to do it. We really need the permanent bathrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alsobrook. Any other speakers?
Mayor, members of council, my name is Larry Shank. My address is 3765 Dawn Drive. I'm here to speak to you about a cost of living adjustment for city employees. We have been diligent about our request. I personally forwarded backup material to the new city manager soon after he arrived. He has advised us that he has not included a COLA in his budget suggestions. For those of you who are new to the city council, and certainly those who were here when we've made this request before, which has been done since 2016, I have a detailed package I can forward to you, which sets out the information that I am going to tell you as a basis for that information. Please consider, it has been almost 15 years since the city stopped COLAs for city employees, supposedly on a temporary basis. The city is still at the bottom of the barrel with regard to COLAs for comparable cities. Last time we checked, even Clarksville has managed to provide a COLA for their employees every year. As was the case last year, tax values have risen significantly. As a result, revenue should be increased over the previous year, and that should be true for ensuing years. Water rates have risen in the last several years, and the city is about to implement an extremely high sewer rate increase, which has a serious effect on people on fixed incomes. Inflation has increased significantly, which is a hidden tax on those who are retired. There are at least 240 employees, not counting their families, most of whom still reside in the Paris area. According to a July 9th TML publication, the city is eligible for over $3 million in stimulus money this year and next.
Mr. Shank, your 2 minutes is up. Will you take just a few seconds and
I will.
wrap it up, please?
I would like to know where those funds are going to be used, and I ask you to please consider the plight of those who have worked so loyally for you in the past years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shank. Any other wishing to speak?
I don't know how to do all this properly. I'm just a concerned citizen. I've recently talked to other fellow citizens.
Would you just give your name
My name is
and
Alvin
address?
Atwood. I live at 2419 Bonham Street. I'm sorry.
That's
Again,
okay.
I'm not proper. Anyway, back to what he said, inflation is going up. I'm a homeowner. I make $40,000 a year, roughly, and that's on a good year. Right now I'm struggling, and our water bills are skyrocketing, and it's getting to where electric's up, remodels up. Cost of living is just out of this wazoo, and we can't afford it, and the water bill is just on a steady climb. I'm trying to support my family on $40,000 a year, and a homeowner, nobody comes to fix anything that breaks. I've got to fix that. Look, I know y'all are up here for free and just trying to help us. Please consider us. the smaller people that just don't have the money. Please, I'm begging you. Thank y'all, that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, James O'Brien, 3150 Bonham Street. I'm here regarding agenda item number 12 and 14. I want to reiterate everything that Dr. Clifford mentioned about that. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel when this matter has already been discussed. I also agree the sweet spot is 11. There's no reason to have 15, and I think less is more. You need less, more educated people, which includes people with experience. We all know that there's no amount of education that replaces wisdom. And you have wisdom by being a previous city employee and sitting on the city council for that committee. And then briefly on agenda item number 14, I was on planning and zoning, and I was one of the commissioners that voted for the sidewalk construction, and we got it wrong. We messed up. We need to fix this. The builders have spoken. I wasn't 100% on what we got passed, but I agree we need sidewalks. We need them in specific areas, and I think if we're going to consider keeping sidewalks and making that mandatory, then we need to either A, consider where that needs to be, i.e. along bus routes. We don't need sidewalks, we need side roads for our ADA. We need people that have problems walking and need to take our public transportation. And number two, consider, again, looking at the budget, matching that. So if we're going to have a sidewalk that ends to nowhere, let's as a city commit to continuing that sidewalk across the next adjacent lot or adjacent lots, a 1 for 2 or at least a 1 for 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public forum. The next item is presentation of the Mayor's Yard of the Month Award. Council, please, if it's one of your constituents, would you come down when we present their award? Staff? Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Campbell's Soup, I believe, is our first award for the Industry Yard of the Month. Is Kelly Porter here or anyone from Campbell's Soup? Okay. Next, Guarantee Bank. This is the commercial award. Mr. Wade White. All right, their certificates and gift cards will be mailed to them. Mr. Pedro Sandoval. Okay. Mr. Alfred Lewis. All right. Mr. and Mrs. Bill Roden. He's not here. He's not here. Sure not. Thank you, though. All right. Welcome. Glad you're here. This is a beautiful yard that is in a home that is 94 or 95 years old. And here's your certificate. Congratulations. And Miss Crawford was
$25 for some more plants for your yard.
Keep Paris Beautiful is providing those gift cards.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. The next home, Danny and Nicole Booth, and she called me and they are ill tonight. And I see our last award winner is a home that's been rehabbed and the yard is beautiful. Miss Leslie Collard. Congratulations. I bet this is the son who might do a few yard chores.
Story. They have 4 trees in their yard that they got from a Keep Paris Beautiful tree giveaway. 18 years ago that are unbelievable. So these guys know how to do it right.
They're huge trees.
There you go. Buy some more fish or some more plants.
Congratulations. Thank you. Item number 10 is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved by a single action of the council, with such approval applicable to all items appearing on the consent agenda. A council member may request any item to be removed from the council agenda and considered as a separate item. Council, or any items you'd like to remove? All right, seeing none, I will hear a... Oh. Number 10?
You mentioned item 10.
Oh, agenda item 10. Uh-huh. All right, I will hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mancosh. A second? Thank you, Mr. Pilgrim. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as it is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. The regular agenda: discuss, conduct a public hearing, and act on a resolution adopting an expanded property-assessed clean energy program for the city of Paris. Staff, do you have a presentation?
Well, I have a small one. This is the last step in establishing the PACE program that we established earlier in the year, and have been expanding it for the past 2 weeks. So this is the night for the public hearing, and once the public hearing is done, then you can act on a resolution establishing the PACE program that's expanded for the whole city. And next week, or the next meeting, what I would bring to you is a contract for services with the Texas PACE Authority, which is a nonprofit organization that administers PACE programs for lots of different cities at no cost to the city. So I'll bring that to you next week if you approve this program tonight.
All right, thank you. I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item, please come forward and give your name and address. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions or comments?
I just have a comment. I think that the PACE program, after reading the contract, reading the information that was presented, I think it's a great opportunity for folks to really be able to use this program. The only question that I have is, will we be marketing this to the general public? I mean, I know that we're presenting it in council, but will this be a marketing promotion?
Yes. Once we pass and approve it, it's official. Yes, I'll be working with our community development director, Andrew Mack. We'll be adding it to our website and adding it to our material. And then whenever people come for our pre-development meetings, we'll be making available, making them aware of that as well. So yeah, we do tend to put it out there.
Fantastic.
And the PACE report is already on the website, so the previous one was on the website, now the new one's on the website.
Any further questions or discussion? I will hear a motion to approve this resolution for PACE.
I move that we pass and adopt a resolution establishing an expanded PACE program for the city of Paris, Texas.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Ms. Knox. It's been moved and seconded that we approve a resolution adopting the extended PACE program for the city of Paris. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Item number 12, discuss and act on an ordinance determining the need for a formal review of the city's home rule charter, providing for qualifications related to the members of a charter review commission, announcing the city's intent to select and appoint the charter commissioners pursuant to Local Government Code Section 9.004, announcing the City Council's decision to hire a consultant to assist the Charter Review Commission with this process, authorizing the Charter Review Commissioners to carefully study the current charter and make recommendations as to amendments. Staff, do you have a presentation, please?
Yes, a short presentation followed by, I'll turn over to Mr. Edmonds here shortly, but at the July 12th City Council meeting, the City Council agreed to engage Mr. Don Edmonds as an expert in this field and charter reviews, and so obviously we engaged him in a contract. So the first step now is to commission an ordinance to basically lay out the structure and order of our process, and so this is a very important process that we're undergoing. This is a foundational document to our community, and so this ordinance and the recommendation that Mr. Edmonds has here will help set the stage and provide structure to the commission as well as the City Council as we move forward in this important process here. So with that, I'll turn to Mr. Edmonds. There are some changes here that he recommends in the process. I'll turn it over to Mr. Edmonds.
Mayor Portugal, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Let me simply say, ordinarily, I come into these projects well before the enabling ordinance
Could
is
you
adopted.
lift the microphone just a little bit? You're taller than anybody else has been tonight. Thank you.
Sure. So I come into these projects well before the enabling ordinance is developed. And well before a charter commission is appointed. That didn't happen in this case, and it is what it is. But if I had come into the project earlier, I would have recommended this ordinance to you exactly as it is. Now, this recommendation is based on my experience with a great number of charter commissions. And for one, I found a long time ago that 15 members is an optimum number for a charter commission, whether a new charter or a revision. And I have found that these charter commissions are best served by laymen, citizens who are genuinely interested in the governance of the city, and are interested in this service and who will gain a certain amount of information and education about the city's operation in the process. So I feel that this ordinance is appropriate, and I certainly recommend it to you for approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, council?
So I do have one quick question, and that's me. Sorry, I know the mask can throw it off. Sorry, Mr. Edmonds. You know, I've thought a lot about this. I've been presented this issue back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. In terms of having staff, previous staff, or city councilors I have served before. So I want to just pose it just so that way it's clear as the air in this room. You recommend that you have 15 citizens on this charter review committee that have not served on council previously, or personnel from the city. And is there a time limit? Why is that exactly?
Well, to be honest with you, Councilman, a charter commission that's loaded with either previous employees or previous council members, they know a lot, and they tend to disproportionately affect the commission. Now, I have nothing against elected officials or past employees. I've known hundreds of them over my years, and I have great respect for all councilmen, current and past. It has nothing to do with persons. I'm not acquainted with members of the charter of the commission that was appointed, so it's not a personal thing at all. I just believe in a commission that's basically made of laymen.
Did you have any more questions?
No, but I did have a question for council.
Oh, okay. I will remind the council and the staff that at the meeting 2 weeks prior to the council meeting where we appointed our nominees, Ms. Ellis, who will be very involved in this process and has been involved in at least one charter review, is that correct?
That is correct.
And she made a presentation to the council and said that we traditionally do not appoint former council members. And that traditionally we would pick from our own district because that would give a wide representation across the city and have every district represented. And that was not followed, and I will take responsibility that I did not speak up and I was not comfortable calling my fellow council members out in front of an audience. But
so that was a suggestion from Ms. Ellis, not a recommendation? Or is it normally that's how it's done? Is that a suggestion or is that in writing?
That's just what we had done before in
But
2011.
Okay. But we chose not to go that route that night because we obviously appointed ex-council members, and so, and I don't pretend to know everything and understand everything, but why would we not want someone who has experience in the community, who has knowledge, who can actually help the other ones that's appointed to this committee to understand some of the things that they possibly don't understand? And because we voted on it, yeah, we can fix the mistake, but it's too late. We'll be going back on our word on what we did and decided, and we should have. I take responsibility too, not taking Ms. Ellis's their recommendation. It's not a law. It was a recommendation, and what we normally don't do. To me, it's too late because we already did that. We already made that decision as far as why should we punish the people who was ready and willing to be a part of this committee to make our city better because we made a mistake on not following what Ms. Ellis recommended. And moving it from 11 to 15, that's just, to me, that's just more, I feel like 11 people is sufficient. It gives you an odd number, so you can't, be in a tiebreaker or nothing like that. I won't go back on my word. I don't, I'm just one vote. I probably don't matter. But when I stand by something and we voted on it as a council to this city, we voted on that, and we didn't take the advice of Ms. Ellis, so that's our fault, but we shouldn't punish the 11 people that were chosen and is ready and willing to work for the city. That's not right. Where's our integrity? We got to have integrity sitting up here. So, again, I don't pretend to know everything and know what's right or wrong, but I do know changing this in midstream. And how did we get in touch with you? I mean, who have you been talking to as far as the changes that we need to make on the charter? Who is your connection? The suggestions for the change?
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
I mean, who brought you here to talk to us? I guess that's what I'm saying, asking.
I'm sorry.
I mean, obviously, I reached out to Mr. Edmonds as a consultant.
I was wondering who.
Okay. Is that the question you're asking? Or
yes.
Yeah,
right.
I had reached out to Mr. Edmonds, looking for a consultant, a qualified consultant.
So if we make changes, the council, we would vote again? Is that what we're talking about, or is it just going to be changed about one person, the charter on the regulations for the?
Well, you would have to vote on this ordinance, either as is or with changes to the ordinance that's in the packet.
So the ordinance as is what we voted for the last time, right? Or this one, the new one?
Well, there wasn't an ordinance the first time. This is an
Okay.
ordinance the first time, and it has the change from 11 to 15 with no former council members and no former staff.
That's what this one is.
Yes. So you would need to vote on this, and you can vote on it with changes. And we can make those changes, but as is, it has those new issues in it.
Yeah, and Mr. Edmonds, he's just making his recommendation off of experience, and so yes, Mr. Edmonds and I have talked, and so the council, you can edit this how you so please. I mean, you can drive this, you can make it 11 versus 15, you can make it former, not former. But obviously, based off his expert background and experience, he recommends the no former council members, no current, no former employees, no current. So, but again, you can change that, and so.
Let me make this point. It's not as if these folks, the commission will operate under open meetings rules just like you do. And it's not as if these folks are not available or would not be available to make any suggestions or any recommendations that they would like to make. So it's not a matter of excluding their background or their ideas.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, please. You know, when we appointed our committee, our charter review committee, we, outside of the individuals outside of the former council members, they're pretty strong individuals. We appointed some folks that, you know, can think for themselves and can, I guess, stand up for themselves. And I don't think that we appointed anybody that is going to sit back and allow another person to not let them participate fully. And it's for that reason I'm going to make a motion that we approve this ordinance with the exception of number 3 in part 1. I say we leave it the way that we've appointed. And part 2, number 1, we leave it at 11 members.
We're not ready for a motion. I think there's some more discussion, please.
We don't have to vote, but that's the motion on the table. We can still discuss, but that's the motion that's out right now. We can still continue to discuss it, ma'am, I think.
A motion's been made, and so, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Any other further discussion?
Mr. Edmonds, how many years have you been doing this?
22 in charter work.
And that's all you do?
That's all I do.
I'm going to stand behind Mr. Edmonds. I think we need to move to 15. I'm going to go completely on your experience. I've never done a charter review. Nobody on this council has done a charter review. Ms. Ellis has. I did not. I was absent at the meeting where she gave us the information about that. But look in hindsight now, I think it's probably a better idea for it to be independent people on there. And I would even like to see probably per district. I think would be better representation for everybody. But I'm behind Mr. Edmonds. I think that's what we hired him to do. He's the professional. He's done a whole lot bigger charter reviews than what we're needing to do, and I'm going to lean on his guidance and his knowledge.
I'd like to make a quick word here. You know, I got on this council roughly 3 months ago, and from an outsider coming in, and not to be negative here, but constructive criticism for this council and how this city governs. Time and time again, have we made motions and passed ordinances and rules where we've had to go back and retract how we do things, whether it's from the EDC from going 5 to 7, or any other board or commission and how we put folks into that board or commission, how we appoint them. It's frustrating. I think we need to sit down, and if there is miscommunication or guidance that has not been properly passed down, whether it be someone saying something that, hey, this was against the rules, we need to call it out. We should all feel comfortable to do that. And I say that being in the seat now. So this is a very difficult decision in my part, because here's the thing. I wasn't here 3 months ago whenever you guys made this decision. I don't know what the ruling was at that time. But I'm frustrated because every single year I find an issue as a citizen where this council votes on something and then they go backwards and then they go forwards and they go backwards and forwards. It's very confusing. So I would implore, please, let us have proper communication with one another and properly legislate. Now, I will say this. Mr. Edmonds, I by no means am a professional at charter reviews. I have no idea. So, I mean, I take your word for what it is. You have 22 years of history in this, and I mean, I'm very torn on this. This is a tough one, but you know, the biggest thing that I definitely agree with is 15. I've looked at other cities and how they do their charter reviews. I took the whole weekend, looked at other cities within the state, just to see how they do it. A lot of people do 15. A lot of people, you know, don't include city council or pass. Some people do. It's very confusing on how we do it, but I think it's up to us. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to take your advice. And I'm going to go with you, Clayton, and go forward and see what the rest of council has to say.
Mayor Pro Tem?
By no means that this council is perfect. I was just on the council at the onset of voting on this, so I take full responsibility myself for not following Ms. Ellis's lead on that. But it's okay to you know, right or wrong. And one thing I'm not going to have is anyone question my integrity. The integrity is to do what's right and what's best for this city, whatever that may be. But my integrity will never be questioned, and I'm very proud of this council. We're going to make mistakes, and everybody needs to understand that. But the integrity is are we able to find those mistakes, realize those mistakes, and then correct them, and have the integrity to do it right here in front of this whole city. So if we have to right or wrong, that's okay. But I take full responsibility for me not following Ms. Janice Ellis.
We didn't do anything wrong.
And I'm not, listen, I'm
Yeah.
speaking, that's just on me. I'm not saying I did anything wrong, but I normally, I know nothing but follow the guidance and directions that are given. That's all I know. That way there's no question about what we're doing here. I'm just saying how I feel about it. But I'm also saying no one is going to question my integrity, and I'm done with that.
You know, I feel like, because I'm going back on my word and what we decided to do as a council, you know, that is my integrity. My word is my bond, and that is my integrity. So if I'm going back on something that, because we made a mistake, or again, it is not the law, it's recommendation. So everything else is okay. I'm with Council Member Knox. It wasn't a mistake. We didn't make a mistake. We went by the information and facts that we had, not disrespecting your 22 years, but I've seen people be on jobs for many years and do something that they shouldn't do or make a mistake too. But again, we did not make a mistake back then. We went by what we decided to do. So now I'm wondering, how are you going to select, because we selected people in our district, so the districts are all well represented, didn't we? We all gave a name?
No.
No.
Yes, I did. Did you?
Somebody appointed a member of my district. So my district right now has 3 representatives.
Yeah, but everybody had an opportunity to bring names for their district. I mean, that's what we did. I remember that. We did that. You know, somebody might have knew somebody in your district and wrote their name down, but I do know we all put in names that we suggested. So how are the names going to be picked now? And if this goes, because I'm just for the record, I don't think this is right. You know, just for the record, this is my opinion. I don't feel like it's right. I feel like we should stick to our word. When the city can't trust us to stick to our word and other people suffer, yeah, we're going to make a mistake, but the people that was ready to serve, I feel like we're letting them down. It's like, okay, no, we don't need you. And you don't know what you're going to get, you know, once you pick the other 15. We don't know who we're going to get. So I just feel like, why would you not want somebody who has some experience in the city government? Why would you not want somebody there? I mean, if I'm going to buy a Lexus, I want to talk to somebody who owned a Lexus, not a Ford. You know, so why would you not want somebody on this committee that's had the past experience? That part I don't get.
Ms. Knox, would you repeat your motion, please? I didn't write it down, and I want to get it right.
Well, I just said that I would make the motion to approve this ordinance with the exception of number 3 on part 1, and that regards the membership, and number 1 on part 2 that asks to increase it to 15, leave it at 11. And the person that I had nominated, that was the motion, but the person I nominated isn't a former city council member. I mean, just for the record.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve the ordinance except moving it from 11 members to 15 members, correct?
Well, I was going to say leave it as is.
Okay.
But I would be willing to make the, if anybody wants to amend that, I would amend the number. But I do think that we need to stick with who we appointed.
Okay. Keeping appointments the same. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion fails 2-4. Okay?
Okay, got it.
All right, item number
Well,
13.
Mayor, you still need to make
over.
it's not over with yet.
Oh, okay, what's the
That's not
second
an
one?
automatic approval.
You still need to make a motion to accept the ordinance as is, or any other edits you want to have, and so, yeah.
Oh, are there any other edits
Or any other motions.
or any other motions?
I'll make a motion to accept the ordinance as written.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve the ordinance as it is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Motion carries 4-2. Okay?
So with that, if I can jump in real quick, obviously with this, this would show 15 members, and obviously under the criteria, there being no former council members and no former employees or current and so forth. You will have to obviously select some new position to fill in, and so it can be done any number of ways. Just to throw out an idea, I would say maybe at the next meeting or the meeting after that, you may bring forward probably either 2 persons per council member, or maybe 3 for the mayor, however you want to do that.
And we can renominate, let's say if Ms. Knox or somebody has somebody that they wanted, they can put that person right back in there, being they're not an ex-city. I've got that problem with one of them I nominated. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you have a person that still fits the criteria here, you can bring that person back and to nominate at the next time we do this. And so, but I'd recommend I recommend that you all probably think of 4 or 5 names to bring back. If you do it per district, you can bring 2 because it limits it. But if you want to do at large, bring 4 or 5 names. That way, in case someone else picks it, you got no one to go off of. Obviously, there's 7 of you, and there's 15 names here. So I thought it would be either the mayor or someone else here to bring 3, or you can pick the 15 person. That's for y'all to decide how you want to do that. And so, but we will need at this point here to reselect the 15 members. So.
And I did not get a yes from the first 2 people I called. I had to call about 4 or 5 people before I got my 2 the last time. They are both still willing to serve. And so, don't wait till the day of the meeting, because it's hard to get people that are busy and involved. You want to be sure you get somebody who's going to have the time and so forth.
Just to clarify here, so the 15 individuals that we're supposed to be picking, can we get a recommendation on this? So they need to be from our district, is that correct?
Well, that's for y'all to decide. Either you can do at-large or you can do per district, and there's advantages both ways. If I were to throw some advantages out there, if you do it per district, obviously every district representative. You do it at-large, you might be able to find maybe a bigger pool of qualified individuals to pick from, and so there's pros and cons both ways.
And then is there a verification process of, I mean, as far as I've looked in the past, hey, they have to be registered voters. They've got to be, registered voters. They have to live in your district. I mean, I want to make sure we all understand what is the process going forward.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't said they have to live in your district. That's, like I said,
They need to live in the,
someone
they need to
selected-
live in the city and be a registered voter, correct? That's our two things that we have to go by, that I've read. Okay.
And after their names are nominated, Ms. Ellis will check that. Is that correct?
As far as registration, voter.
Yes,
I sure
voter
will.
registration.
Can we make I'm making a suggestion, not a motion, but can we say that each person nominates two like we did last time? All 7 members nominate 2, and then the 15th be appointed by mayor and mayor pro tem or something of that sort? That'll be you're gonna have 15 to have a tiebreaker anyway. We've got 15 in our ordinance. I'm just trying to figure out how do we do that where that's fair, everybody's represented.
However the council wants to do it. Will you restate your?
Saying each council member picks 2, so 7 times 2 is 14, and then the last member be at large and picked by mayor, mayor pro tem, or y'all 2 together, being y'all are the head of the council.
Okay. There's been a motion.
That's not a motion, not a motion.
Oh, you didn't make a
Suggestion.
motion. Okay.
I don't know if we need to have a motion or not.
Discussion?
As long as it don't change again, I'm good. We just need to be consistent. I'm tired of the changes in front of everybody because it doesn't make us look good.
I'm going with that, if that's good with everybody else. Okay.
I'm fine.
I'll have 2 names when I come back next council meeting.
And is that you recommend per district?
I think they just have to be they have to live in the city. I don't necessarily think it has to be district.
Yeah, and so with that, I'd recommend if you do it at large, you may want to bring 4 or 5 names just in case. And because one way I might recommend is probably you go down the line. Okay, Mr. Pilgrim, you give out one name, then Ms. Knox, you get one name, then you go back around.
Yeah, in
and
case
that
we
way,
got duplicates.
if Ms. Knox picked someone that Ms. Stone had picked, you've got someone else ready to go. So if we do it at large, I bring 4 or 5 names just in case.
Fair enough. I'm good with that if everybody else is.
Does that need to be a motion or just, that's us?
If that's what the consensus is, you can go with consensus, or you could do a motion, just however you prefer.
That consensus with everybody?
Yep.
I'm in agreement.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 13.
Mr. Evans. Thank you.
Just one other quick
okay.
point, Mayor. I understand that you're going to take up the appointments at your next meeting. And let me remind you that one other requirement of the ordinance is that the council at that time name a chairman from those 15 folks.
So be thinking about that too. And so obviously you won't know everyone's going to be until that meeting there, but that's one thing we'll have to do at that meeting is to, okay, we've got the 15 names, then there has to be a process to identify a chairman or just a motion and a vote or something.
Well,
So
you could take nominations like you do for.
Sure.
What if somebody has been on a former board, for the city? Are they eliminated too?
no, it's not board members, it's just council members.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Edmonds?
No, except along that line, assuming that those appointments are made, the schedule that we've worked up for the project will have the orientation meeting and organizational meeting of this commission on Monday, September 6th.
What was that date again?
Monday, September 6th.
Monday, September 6th.
And that's the time that we'll bring the commission together and go through the necessary orientation and discussion about how we're going to proceed with the project. and then we'll be moving off on the schedule.
And will that be at 5:30, 5, what?
Yeah, 5:30 on the, and that, we're assuming that the commission is going to meet on the first and third Mondays, not on, obviously on council days.
You'll need to find a place,
Well,
because I believe that'll be planning and zoning meeting.
Well,
We'll work it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're working out the details and exactly where and when, and that, all that information will be given immediately to the appointees.
Okay.
And let me just say, I think that you'll be pleased with the product of this commission. It will be accomplished, and it will be open to the public, and it will be delivered to this council on schedule, and you'll be happy with the report. And you still, of course, have the choices or the responsibility to decide which of the recommendations of that commission are to be devoted or be voted upon come next May. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edmondson. Item number 13, receive, discuss, and act on the Paris Economic Development Corporation's 2021-2023 Plan of Work. Ms. Hammond?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having me here today. Pursuant to our bylaws, I'm here today to ask for your consideration and approval of the PEDC Plan of Work. It is a 2-year plan of work. If you'll permit me, I was just going to give a brief overview and then open it up for questions. So we started the planning process for this plan of work back in February of this year. The board met for a planning session. From that retreat, we broke out into several committees to work on our various programs of work. So we had a marketing committee, finance, incentive review, and land review committee. So this plan embodies the work of all of those committees. The fundamental elements of an economic development plan, along with countless conversations with the mayor, city manager, city council, Paris Junior College, and the Lamar County Chamber of Commerce, several organizations. So a great deal of work went into this plan. I'd like to call your attention to page 3. It's titled The Plan of Work Summary and Priorities. So this is just a high-level overview of the strategic plan, along with some initial some initial priorities identified. And I do also want to call attention to the authors and contributors of the plan, since there was a lot of work involved. At that time, my board chairperson, which is still my board chair today, Josh Bray, at the time, Shay Bills, Mahir, Chase Coleman, Curtis Finley, Dr. A.J. Hashmi, and Stephen Terrell. So those were the authors and contributors for this plan. And I do want to take an opportunity, since I'm here, what the board does and what you all do is thankless. So I'm going to take every opportunity I can to really brag on my board and to thank you all for appointing an A-star team back then and today. I don't think people realize how much work goes into what we do. Dinners, meeting with prospects, council, Josh Bray, my board chair, hours we taking my phone calls and meeting on different things. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to share that. And thank you all for these great appointments you've given me. But really, that is all I have. And then I did want to mention, I know you're going to be hearing from the city manager, Grayson Path, here shortly about some water infrastructure plans. That is so important to what we do. It's critical. And so I just want to thank Mr. Path for his vision, understanding economic development, and seeing the long game. That's not always the case, and so it's refreshing, and you all support. We wouldn't make the strides that we have today without your support. So you'll hear me say this over and over again so long as it's true. So I really want to thank you for your partnership It's really important to what we do and the jobs we grow and retain. So with that, I'd open it up for questions.
I just think it's a well-written and well-thought-out plan. I know Ms. Stone and I were at that planning session. I think Mr. Pilgrim was. Obviously, Mr. Pankosh was because he was a member of the board at that time. But I believe that's the first planning session that the PEDC had in a while. And I think lots of good information came from it. And you did a beautiful job of putting it down concisely and well-written document.
Thank
Any
you.
questions of Ms. Hammond?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. I know previously with the EDC, it was always kind of tough to formulate our thoughts and put them together. Everyone had great thoughts to bring to the table and formulate a good plan, but it was never like written down. So like, I appreciate this process. I hope that the EDC boards in the future continue on this process. It is important to have a good plan of work. And this is fantastic because now we know, hey, these are what, and the timelines. I love the timelines. At least we have something to kind of hold it strong and to, figure out, hey, how are we looking on this? Can we get an update? So this is great. I really appreciate this.
Any further questions? All right, I'll hear a motion to approve the EDC plan of work.
Make a motion to approve the EDC's plan of work as written.
Thank you, Mr. Pilgrim. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the PEDC's 2001 to 2023 plan of work. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Item number 14, discuss and act on a resolution approving a 12-month hiatus in the enforcement of Subdivision Ordinance Chapter 9, Exhibit A, Section 9J, regarding the requirement of constructing sidewalks on single lots. Mr. Mack?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item is being brought to you this evening following discussion by my department and myself, as well as with the city manager, city attorney. We've been experiencing some rather difficult situations in having to administer and enforce to the word of the law our requirements for new construction and having to build sidewalks. Some of the challenges that we've been coming in and encountering, in addition to extensive additional cost that has been unplanned by a number of landowners, both in terms of residents as well as businesses, is the fact that we are receiving comments from those residents and businesses about planning and requiring installation for sidewalks to nowhere. And the first thing that I recognized when I came and started in my position was the fact that the term nowhere is maybe only a temporary phrase, but what's more important is that it's based on some sort of a plan. And right now, that's what we're lacking. We're lacking a plan as a part of our comprehensive plan for how we actively transport ourselves around on bicycles, on sidewalks, on trails, to really tie the whole thing together as a community. What are those specific criteria? What ability does the staff have to administer some degree of flexibility and common sense in administering this? And right now, we don't have that. So I think the best thing that we can do at this point is put a pause on this requirement. You have a resolution before you this evening allowing the staff to do just that. This was discussed a week ago by the Planning Commission. They're in support of further examination of this, developing a study. We'll take that up at the next agenda item. But at this point, I'm going to recommend that our council this evening go ahead and pass this resolution, placing a pause on this for 12 months, allowing a committee to form and study this consideration. We will bring back and develop a full committee that will involve various aspects of staff, planning commission, and the council, and also our partners with the Trail to Paris, as well as our partners with Texas Parks and Trails. So again, recommend that you adopt this resolution. It also gives an opportunity, if necessary, to extend it by 6 months. I'm optimistic we can accomplish this in a year or less, and I believe that we have the resources in-house to do it without the need for additional cost. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
This would still allow for sidewalks for new road construction and new subdivisions and so forth. We're not putting a hiatus on that, I think. And so, is that correct?
That's right. The resolution would allow the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to council on plat approvals following staff recommendation for new subdivisions. At that point, that would involve, new streets, new infrastructure. We don't want to eliminate that opportunity, so that would still be a possibility, but it would be on a case-by-case basis. And it would have your oversight as well as the recommendations of your Planning Commission.
And as drafted, the resolution that you have, the hiatus applies to these single lot remodels or developments so that you don't have the little blocks of sidewalk. I think that's what the intention of the hiatus is, not to subdivisions.
A question I had, or more of a comment, really. I completely agree with folks who have had an issue with this, because I myself have an issue with this. I mean, it's tough to ask someone to put a sidewalk that goes to nowhere, right? So I absolutely agree with this. I understand two things. One, I know TxDOT's Loop 286 project potentially calls in for a sidewalk on both sides of the loop. I would like to see, and again, this is with council's approval or amendment to this, to work with TxDOT on that also, because I think that could make for a very large benefit to a lot of people in this community if folks could travel from the loop to the trail or vice versa. It would be nice to have that opportunity. Now, I don't know if that will ever happen based on TxDOT's, budget and rulings and everything else that goes on with the state, but that's something to look into and have a good partnership with the city and TxDOT. The other thing that I would like to discuss is, it's a very tough situation whenever we talk about builders wanting to build and making it tough on them. I think that you guys have heard this many times now in terms of putting in a sidewalk. It's tough. It's a tough thing, a pill to swallow, and more of an expense to make it harder on a builder. So I appreciate you listening and looking into that. The other thing is I understand that you're looking at a subcommittee, or I guess the Planning and Zoning Committee, to look at that. My question is what's the plan of action? Will there be a survey being taken? Will there be discussions? Will you invite developers from the city? What's kind of the plan of action right now, or is there even a plan at the moment? I know this is kind of new, so.
Thank you for your comments and questions, Councilmember Pankage. On the first response, excellent point. We have already reached out to TxDOT to ask for their involvement as a part of this, knowing that the future reconstruct of elements of the loop highway system will include some sort of a multi-purpose trail in those locations. We certainly want to take that into account. Number two, in terms of the process, it will be developed as a subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so obviously staff will have some input into how that's developed and organized, but it will be kind of an ad hoc committee that will be working to bring forward some recommendations to the Planning Commission. And as we would follow any other process to amend our comprehensive plan, there would be a public hearing held on it at the Planning Commission. And I'm not certain if we adopt an ordinance, if that's the case to the comp plan, it would possibly be a public hearing before the council as well. So the rules of the game will be developed as the subcommittee is formed, but basically the end goal is to develop a master trails and sidewalk plan for the entire city.
And the item says you want at least one city council member on that. So is there anyone who's interested, would
And
like to
that's the
volunteer?
next item.
Oh, okay, okay. So are we have any more questions or?
Can I make a motion?
Yes,
I'll make a motion to give the 12-month hiatus as written, as Mr. Mack is requesting.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to act on a resolution approving the 12-month hiatus on enforcement of subdivision sidewalks on single lots. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries 6-0. All right, now item number 15, discuss and appoint at least one city council member to the Planning and Zoning Master Trails and Sidewalk Plan Subcommittee.
Thank you again, Mayor, members of council. As I mentioned at the last Planning Commission meeting, there were 2 members of that body appointed to create this subcommittee. And so we are bringing forward a recommendation to you this evening to appoint at least one of your members from the council. I feel that it's helpful to have a liaison, at least from both bodies, that sits on this subcommittee. So with that, I would just ask you to dialogue amongst yourself to see who has interest. And if there's more than one, by all means.
Any volunteers? Mayor Pro Tem Hughes, anyone else?
I said as a liaison for P and Z, so I could follow up, but please, go for it. I'm good. Got too much on my plate.
Okay, all right. Then we will appoint Mayor Pro Tem Hughes to that committee.
Do we need a motion for that or anything?
As the chair, she has the power to appoint.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Because the next item is going to be pretty lengthy, I'm going to call for a 15-minute recess. We'll reconvene at about 7 minutes before 7. it upstairs?
Yes.
Wait, you want to go get it?
She'll put it on the screen too. I'll see it.
We don't have our manager.
He's coming.
He's coming, okay.
Go around the corner there.
Oh, he's going to be down there.
Yeah, because he's going to put it on the screen.
Did you download your budget on that?
You're going to use this?
Not yet.
Item number 16 is to receive a presentation from the city manager, discuss and provide direction on the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget for the city of Paris. Mr. Path?
Yes. All right. I had a presentation slideshow here before you today, and I'm going to do the best I can to try to get through this as fast as we can here. But with that, I hope you appreciate that. I don't want to rush it too much. This is the budget, and so I don't want to go through it too fast. Back on July 26th, I submitted to the City Council a memorandum. It's my executive summary in accordance with the city charter. And under our charter, it does lay out, it's like sections 44 through 57 or something like that, that this is what the budget must include. You have to have this section, this section, this section, this section. Last year was my first year doing this, and so prior to that, I can't find evidence that we had actually gone through and identified this. We met all the sections there. So my memorandum is designed to do that very thing, to comply with the charter, and then give the information the charter requires. And so my goal tonight is just to kind of summarize what's in that memorandum. And I know you've all had it for about 2 weeks now. And the goal here tonight is obviously not to just be, this is a done deal, we're done, rubber stamp, move on. I do know there'll be some more meetings here, but obviously it takes an opening presentation to get started. And so at the very end of the presentation here, we'll be discussing some workshops, next steps. I know Mr. Anderson has thoroughly examined the budget timeline per state law that we have to follow, and so he can speak on that. And so, but get back to my presentation here. So again, under the city charter, the city council's power under section 21 subsection 3 is to adopt the budget of the city. And under 40 subpoint 2, the city manager's power and duty is to prepare the budget and submit it to the city council and be responsible for its administration and after adoption. And so that's the role I play. I also take what the staff puts together, put it all together, and present to you a final proposed draft budget to then go forward, and the council can consider, discuss, and take from there. So, and in that budget there, as you have, each of you would have seen a binder like this I have in front of me. I know there's a lot of information there, but I try to be very transparent with what I do. I try to give you all the details. I know it's a lot, but that's why I'm always available to discuss and answer questions. But at the same time, we know that we have a team. I have many of them here today. They're here at your disposal to answer questions if you're having tonight, and the future workshops as well. They will come as well for those to answer questions. I don't know everything. Again, even I don't know every detail in this budget, and so I've gone through very carefully and thoroughly, line by line. But obviously, they know their departments better than I do, and so we will have them here for that purpose as an asset to the council. So you also have with us exhibits A through D, the proposed revenue, the proposed expenditure, the itemization of positions, and long-term debt amortization schedules, all required by the charter to do those here. And then lastly, a big part of this budget here is a memorandum for the comparable pay study. You have that in your packet. I think it's attachment 6. I believe was in your list there, also on the Dropbox as well. So that was obviously a very big piece going back to last year's budget. So, and at any point you have questions, stop me, and or else we can answer questions at the very end as well. And so I'll just, like I said, I'll give a brief overview of the whole thing, and then you can ask Q&A at that point, or you can ask any time. This is for your purposes, and so. First thing one of the things that the charter requires us to analyze is the tax rate, looking at both operational and maintenance as well as debt service tax rate. As we all know, the state came forward a few years ago and required the appraisal district to start to increase values. We don't control that. The state required that, so the appraisal district did their duty and started to raise the values. Now, I'll get to this a little bit later, but getting to the Texas Property Tax Reform and Transparency Act 2019, they placed a 3.5% cap on how much property tax we can collect in a year. So if I raise $8 million this year, I only can raise $8 million plus 3.5% next year. It's not a 3.5% on the rate, it's on the levy, how much I actually receive in tax money to do the business we do. So, but with that, when it's the way the calculation works is you take the valuation of the city times the tax levy equals the levy. If the levy is capped at 3.5%, it means the other two factors are inverse of each other. So the value goes up, the rate goes down. And vice versa, the value goes down, the rate could go up. And so that's obviously up to the council. And so with this, I am proposing in my budget a 3.5% increase. I do believe we need to be doing that in order to keep up with rising costs to do service. I'll get to that in a little bit later. So with this, you'll see in the fiscal year 21-22 a line there. Our O&M operation maintenance is going down from 39 cents to 37 cents. Debt is going down from 8.3 cents down to 8.0 cents, for a total of 48 cents down to 45.37 cents. So that is a change of 2.7 cents from this current year right now. Again, that does not mean taxes are going down, it just means the rate's going down. So I am proposing, I want to make it clear to everyone who's listening and watching that I am proposing an increase in tax collection. And so that is critical for operation in order for us to provide services to the citizens. So with this, part of the things we look at is we have in our fiscal year 21-22 budget, we have 53 separate funds. We obviously we primarily work out of 4 funds. We have the general fund, we have a new airport fund, which I'll talk about in a second here. We have the water and sewer fund, which is Fund 10, and we have the sanitation and trash fund, which is Fund 45. That's where we carry out our day-to-day operations is in those 4 funds. The other funds are special purpose funds. They're things that we have. We will receive some money from the state that has to be spent only on this particular purpose and nothing else. We're required to separate those out so they don't get jumbled into the general fund. So we do itemize those. They're also in your packet as well. I don't spend a lot of time on those because the rules are set, and so we do just show us spending that money if we decide to, if we need to, if an opportunity comes up. But the primary purpose that we focus on is the operational funds 1, 3, 10, and 45. So with this, typically what we try to have a balanced budget. And so we try to propose new revenue equals expense. Because of the pay study and because of some of the capital purchases we have to make this year that I'm proposing we make here, I am proposing that we do dip into some of our general fund reserve in order to balance this. The general fund you'll see in revenue is $25.57 million in revenue. Expense is $25.913 in expense. So there's a negative balance of $342,000 there for the general fund. So I propose that we use $342,000 of the general fund reserve to balance that. Now, obviously, that's never the ideal. You never want to dip in your reserve if you can so help it. But what I did here is I looked at last year's ending. And so this has been fiscal year 1920, what we ended up last year as. And I see, again, we passed a balanced budget, so we had revenue equals expenditure. At the end of the year, we actually had a net gain. We came in under budget and over in revenue. So we had a net increase there. Kudos to the taxpayers and the people who pay their sales tax, and kudos to the staff for obviously coming into the budget and trying to save money there. So I looked at that number as about $1 million there, and I try to keep I will work within this. I don't want to tap into the rest of the reserve because we need to try to maintain a 4-month reserve in our general fund there. Now, obviously, that's a moving target. We don't get our revenue every day incrementally. We get it in spurts. And so one day we may have a 9-month reserve, then we may have a 3-month and 14-day reserve. And so because we get our revenue, we have to live off that until the next time we get our big blast of property tax. And so it is a moving target. When people ask me, how much is your reserve? Well, it depends on the day. And so it depends on what time of the year is. And so if I got my property tax way up front, I got 9 months, but I have to live off that the rest of the year. And so the end is down to 4 months again. So working with Mr. Anderson, we carefully analyzed what I proposed here, and we are very confident that this will not jeopardize our 4-month reserve. Another way I look at this is this. We have a lot of, as we'll get to, we have a lot of very important expenses. We have a lot of very important capital expenses. This reserve here is actually going to be used to help fund some of our water and sewer infrastructure. Given our rates are at where they're at, we do not have enough in order to make some needed repairs. We do have some water filtration and some pump equipment at Pat Mays we need to fund. And so this reserve here will only fund non-reoccurring expenses. You never want to use the reserve to fund reoccurring expenses. Otherwise, you eventually run out. And so this is only going to fund non-reoccurring expenses, and so that's critical there. So now with that, another piece I look at this is, given obviously last year we came in above, on revenue we came in under expenditure. It doesn't make sense as a good steward of the taxpayer to then try to tax an additional $329,000. I've got it here. And so to me, if I've got it and the reserve is healthy enough, it makes sense to me financially as a steward of the taxpayer dollar to utilize some excess. So we had a good year. And so instead of me having to raise another $342,000, let's use what I've got. And so and the taxpayers have already paid that. Let's utilize that. So that's the general fund. Airport fund, a brand new fund. As you all know, recently we are taking over the full control of the airport. We are currently in the process of trying to hire a new airport manager. With this, we are taking over the fuel sales and operations. So working with Mr. Anderson, we decided it's best to actually pull it out of the general fund and put it into his own fund so that we can actually track that better, because this is hopefully going to be producing money that we can then put back into the airport. We have a $2.5+ million capital project coming up with TxDOT. This is a large maintenance project they're going to be doing. We have a 10% match requirement to do that. So we want to get ready for that. So any available excess we have will go towards that. We also received this year some CARES funding from the state for airports alone. That was $69,000. I recognizing I had this big project on the horizon, I snatched that and I'm saving it, because obviously we need to fund our 10% match. It was about $200,000. So we're already part way there. Next year is phase 1, where we're going to be designing that project. And then phase 2 will be the following year or the year after that. We're actually going to fund the project. And so we're getting ourselves ready for that. And for me, it just makes sense that the state is putting forth $2+ million for capital projects. If they're paying 90%, we should try to find a way to get the 10%. It's an asset. We own that. We want to make the best we can possibly make it, and so we're working towards that. So that's why you see a net difference there, or dipping the reserve. That's actually utilizing that CARES funding to fund the engineering for that. The Coronavirus Relief Fund, this is Fund 5. As you know, last year we received about $1.4 roughly million in CARES funding from the federal government. We've already spent almost half of that. We gave some money to the schools. We gave some money to the health district. I'm drawing blanks on the other things, and so, but we used some money for that. So we have about $714,000 in excess. Because of the pay study and because of how important that is to our operation and what we need to do with this, I'm proposing that we utilize the remaining of the CARES funding here to go towards a much-needed first responder and water and sewer capital outlay expenses. And so I've itemized that in your sheets here. But I'm going to be focusing on police, fire, and EMS, as well as a jetter truck for our water and sewer. And I'll get to that a little later there. So I do propose that we spend that down to zero and utilize that funds there. It is a blessing, and I'm just going to say that outright. It's a blessing we receive that. The pay study is a large expense, and this will allow us to get that done faster versus dragging it over several years by utilizing this one-time capital outlay opportunity we have here. Beginning of the American Rescue Plan Fund, this was actually mentioned a few times earlier in this meeting here. We have been given word that we are eligible for $6 million in American Rescue Plan Fund. This is basically a CARES funding 2.0. And the federal government is issuing out to every city, and I'd say every city in the country, I don't know it for sure, but most cities in the country, additional funds to go towards 4 eligible purposes that are kind of COVID related. The number one purpose in there that we're focusing on is water and sewer infrastructure. And that's kind of the unique one of the bunch there. But my plan here is that we're supposed to be getting $3 million this next year. They're going to get another $3 million a year later. but I want to start spending that money towards our water infrastructure. I want to start to lay sticks in the ground. And I do believe, and this is my opinion, but I do believe that if we can build the lines, we can start drawing in primary jobs. A big part of these developers when they come to town is, do you have available infrastructure or not? If you don't, they do, and they'll go there. And so it's kind of chicken and the egg. A lot of cities, and even City Parish before this, has always been, well, we do require in our current ordinance that if you come as a developer, you need to lay the new lines. And and that's good in some respects, but when it comes to primary jobs like this, I do think the more ready we are ahead of the game, lay the lines now, and we're ready to go. So my proposal is that we would circumnavigate the Gene Stallings Park Industrial District, and then we also have some work going towards the northwestern industrial district there. And then from there, I want to start laying lines along the southern half of the loop. So there's a lot of open space down there, a lot of prime land. And I know there's lots of reasons for why it could be undeveloped, but a big reason is a lot of it doesn't have utility lines. And so I do believe that if we can start laying 12-inch, 15-inch lines through there, we might still be able to start attracting properties there. That's still to be worked out in the future there. But the nice thing is we have staff on hand through our CIP department that can do this job. Our guys are qualified to lay lines. 2/3 of any project is labor. I've already got that. I'm already paying these guys to exist. So that means I can get more sticks in the ground for the same dollars there. So I want to utilize these guys, turn them loose, and let them do what they were hired to do, which we've not done for years now. And so I want to start laying lines there. And I know Michael Smith, the Public Works Director, is very excited about that. He used to be the CIP superintendent, so this is right up his alley. And so we also need to buy some equipment for that. We need to buy an excavator and some other things. We have some, but I want to buy some newer stuff to get us ready for that. We are obviously working with a consultant here to make sure that whatever we do spend the money is eligible, clear. I don't ever want to have to come back and repay it. And so we're being clear on that. So if it comes back and says you can't spend money on that purpose, I won't do that. And so another big piece of this is I'd like for us to buy a generator for our ground storage facility. It's about a little less than $500,000 to do that. It's a large power need, and so it's a big piece of equipment. Working with the staff to get a turnkey on that. And so given that it's water infrastructure, we plan to utilize this funding here to help give ourselves a generator so that what happened in February doesn't happen again. As you will recall, we had our power cut off to our ground storage. Helped us realize that is one of our weak links in the chain there, because when we lose power there, no more water comes to town. And so it's very critical that we have power available at all times there, even during rolling blackouts. And so there's that piece. Now I will say, if it comes back and the state says that's not eligible, I do intend to, and I'll just say this now, I do intend to actually replace that into the CARES funding, the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That is a top priority, and I know the council has discussed in the past. And so if it comes back and they say you cannot spend the money on the generator there, I will actually put that under the Coronavirus Relief Fund there to get this thing done. And so I'll have to make some tough decisions there about, okay, I'm sorry, Department Head X, I am going to cut this piece out so we can get this generator in there. So, but I feel pretty good about what the information we have so far. Water and sewer fund, we do show it being balanced. Again, we are having to use some general fund reserve to help make that balance there. Our revenue is not quite enough to give some of the very critical infrastructure improvements we need to have in the water and sewer fund, but otherwise it's balanced. And sanitation fund is also balanced as well. So our overall combined operational budget is about $47 million in expenditure and about $47, and in balance with $47 million with revenue and available reserve. The overall budget as a whole is $58.6 million in expenditure and $57.2 million in revenue. Again, our special purpose funds, those things we may get $50 in for some special purpose. We've already got $1,000 in the fund already, so I may spend $1,000, only getting $50, but again, the money's already there. And so that's why there's a difference on those special purpose funds. And again, in the future, in this here, what we proposed here should not threaten our 4-month reserve for the general fund. So. A big part of the charter is to establish a financial policy, and we have not had one before I arrived. At least not that I can find. And so I wrote one last year, and I liked it so much I used it again this year. And so what our financial policy we have in the budget is The overall financial policy of the City of Paris, as shown through its proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget, is to serve the public with professionalism, civility, honesty, and integrity, and provide a safe and prosperous community by being responsible stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and to provide quality, efficient, and effective services that facilitate and enhance the quality of life, recreational enjoyment, economic opportunity, responsible planning, improvement in infrastructure, and public safety for all. I think, in my opinion, this encompasses what we're here to do. It covers a lot of ground there, but we cover a lot of ground as a city, and so we're in a lot of areas. And so, but I strongly believe in professionalism and civility. I strongly believe in us being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar, and I strongly believe in us providing good services to our citizens. We do the best we can with what we've got, but what we can do, we should do well. And so everything that I've done in this policy here is for that purpose. Is coming back to the policy here. Now getting to the budget message itself, the charter does require that we identify some priorities in the budget here, and so I'm going to go through each one individually here. But just like last year, employee pay was my number one priority last year. Is my number one priority this year. Capital purchases, new positions, we'll discuss those. Realignment of line item budgets, maintaining operational services, and of course, staying within the Texas Property and Tax Reform and Transparency Act of 2019. I'm just going to call it SB 2 for short there. So, Senate Bill 2. The employee pay. So I got a few slides in this deal. So, as I discussed last year, the number one priority for me coming into this job here, when I arrived and I scoped out the situation, scoped out what we have in front of us, was to address employee pay. Our greatest asset is our employees, and so we provide a labor-intensive service. Ours is a service field, and so without our employees, there is no service. And we can have all the nice fire trucks, we can have all the nice police cars, we can have all the nice jetter trucks and digger and excavators, but without good quality, knowledgeable staff, it's worthless. And so we recognize, and we've known for years that our pay has not kept up. And it's been kind of the monster in the room that people have kicked down the road. And so unfortunately, prior councils and prior managers have cornered us, and we have to now address this issue. And so I do believe that it is right for us to address this issue. So recognizing this issue, last year the City Council authorized and I commissioned a comparable pay study to determine a strategy to correct this issue. A consultant was hired, a public sector personnel consultant. He will be available at our next budget workshop if you so choose to have him there to discuss the process. Now, as a city manager under the charter, obviously I'm tasked with preparing a budget, so I studied the issue, I studied the methodology, I determined strategies for implementing this critical element of our operations, and I've drafted a budget here that gets it done. It gives you an opportunity to do what no one has done in 20 plus years, is to get ourselves to the average point, and so that we can then keep up going forward there. And again, I presented it to you back in July 26. I apologize for the lateness of that. That was not planned. I give you my word of that. It was not planned to go that late. I simply just could not get it done in time to do it sooner. If I could have, I absolutely would have. But I mean, as you know, one of my future requests is an assistant city manager. And I've just been slammed for last year and 4 months to get things done. And I just could not get this thing done to you sooner. And I apologize for that. That is on me and on me alone. Disclaimer, as I said in my memo to you there in section 6 of your packet here, this budget does not propose any change to my pay. And so I'm not proposing, just like last year, I'm not proposing any change to my pay. I'm a contract employee. We negotiate that separately if you so wish. Otherwise, what I have is what I have, and I accept that. And so, city judge, these three are your employees: the city manager, city judge, city attorney. City judge, we didn't have any really adequate comparable, so I have no recommendation to you to discuss with your judge if you so choose to do that. So there is no proposed change there. City attorney, she is on our pay plan, our step plan. That's decided by the former council there. So I did present to you some potential changes for that if you so choose. I have discussed with Ms. Harris. She knows that is strictly up to your discretion there as her immediate supervisor. And so the budget does show a change for hers in accordance to what I've done for the employees there, but the council can control that as you so choose. And also to my proposal doesn't show adjustments for the staff of the judge and the attorney as well. And so I did wrap them into, I know they're not my employees, but I did wrap them into the process as well, given they're on our step plans. And so so we have all that information available. So the goal of a comparable pay study is multifold, and so what you want to do is you need to identify a number of comparable communities. You have to look at all kinds of factors and do the best you can to find communities that reasonably relate to us. You're never going to find a one-to-one in every town and every position. We have over 100 plus positions, 300 employees. You will never find a one-to-one that matches us. And so what you do, you try to identify 10 or more communities so that way you develop a reasonable average across the board for your employees there. Some towns may have 4 comparables to this position. Some may have all 10. You just cannot control that. And so that's why you try to identify 10 communities or more to do that. And so we identify them there in your packet. I think it's page 2 of the memo, the towns I picked for this, working with a consultant. You then go to work and determine averages for each position by position. And so we hired a consultant, he goes forth, he gets job descriptions, he compares them. You don't go by titles because we may call something different. A good example is in the police department. Not every department has an officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, chief. Some go officer, lieutenant, so they skip sergeant. But you have to figure out who's doing the same duties. You go by that, and so you look at job descriptions. Now, with 100 plus positions, 10 towns, that's 1,000 plus job descriptions to go through, and or more. And so that's why you hire a consultant to do all that for us. Their goal, and he can speak to this more too, is try to find within about 80 or so relative comparison. You're never going to find a one-to-one. That's just not possible. And so that's why you get a numerous of them to try to find that average there to figure out how that goes. And a big part of this is it is not a study of the person in the position, it's a study of the position itself. We have a lot of very qualified, talented, knowledgeable employees in our community, but unfortunately, when you do these studies here, you have to study the position, and you have to study what the position is marketing at, because again, we have to think of what is fair for the employee and what is fair for the tax and ratepayer. Obviously, the employee wants to make more, the tax and ratepayer wants to pay less. And so we have to find that middle ground there. That's why you have to look at overall responsibility across the board. And that way you don't show favoritism. That way you don't show favorites amongst your staff. And you just treat them all relatively the same. There is that. So with that, once you develop averages, you create a reasonable pay scale based on these averages and reasonable internal factors. We do have to, like that police example there, we do have to make some adjustments there, because if we went straightly off of the comparables, I would have like police officer, min to max, I would have sergeant, min to max, I'd have lieutenant. There's just no separation there. And so you have to make some internal adjustments there in order to create some separation between positions and hierarchies. And so you cannot always go just off of the average in every situation. That's why, as a city manager, I went through every position by name numerous times. I have a spreadsheet over 1,000 lines of every position here, trying to figure out the right method to move everyone to what makes sense. It's not perfect. I know I'm sure I made some mistakes, but we could do this thing for 100 years and never get it perfect. And so there's always going to be some way different we could have done that. And so we develop a strategy, develop a plan with a scale, and then ultimately we create a method to try to how do we get that done? How do we afford this? Do you phase it over 5 years, 3 years? You get it done in 1 year? Do you drop in steps? There's just all kinds of ways of doing that. So that's my job, is to develop a strategy for y'all to do that. So working with the consultant, we identify the 10 communities, we pull job descriptions, we compare their positions, we adjusted for some reasonable uniqueness for our operations, we create a new scale, and we determine a strategy, which is before you today, to get this thing done. And now, as I touched on earlier, pay studies are very complicated and very complex. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with their pay. You're dealing with their lives. You're dealing with individuals who they know what they do. They don't know what other ones do, but they always compare each other. And so you're dealing with a lot of factors here that are just very complex and complicated. And so we need to try to treat all employees the same as we go through this process, with some exceptions as appropriate for that unique position here, given our hierarchy we have here. So you try to use the same methodology across all positions. That creates a fairness. Some win more than others, but it just cannot be helped. It cannot be helped mathematically. You cannot please everyone equally. If I could, I absolutely would. As all my employees are equal to me. But some positions are 30% off, some are 10% off, some are on comparable, some are ahead of comparable. Some, the min is 10% off, but the max is 30% off, or vice versa. You have some positions that are on, you have multiple people in the same rank, the same position. So you try to maintain some reasonable separation there so that a person on step 1 today, person on step 8 today, they're not on the same step come October 1st. Because the person on step 8, they've been here for 15 years, they would expect to have some separation for the newbie. And so you try to do a strategy that across the board maintains some separation there. It's very hard. I had over 10 scenarios that I ran through the last few months to try to figure out, okay, if I do this, man, now I screwed this one up. It's like a Rubik's Cube I put in here. When you go to make one side green, you may have screwed up the other 5 sides. And so you have to look at everything as a whole. Every decision for each employee has to be made with the whole of that employees in mind. So when I go to make one change for this position, how is that going to impact these other 10? I ran into a lot of that. And so it's very complicated. It's very complex, but we've done that. And so otherwise, if you go to impact one employee in a vacuum, ignoring all, you may start down a rabbit hole that there's no coming back from. Because every employee has worth. Every employee has backgrounds, degrees, certifications, experience, just all kinds of things. And so if we start down the road for one person, you have to go that with the rest of everyone else then. So after many arduous hours and experimentation, examination, we have carefully produced the study you have before you today. Again, I would strongly caution against any further edits to the proposed scale itself, because again, it's like a Rubik's Cube. You go to tweak one thing, you will unravel numerous other things. This is on me. As a city manager, you've hired me to make the tough calls for my staff, and so I've done that. And so I ask that there's trust that I'll say I try to treat everyone equally, everyone fairly, and not everyone wins equally. And so every employee in my proposal will have an increase. And so I have set it up to where everyone will get something. Just now everyone can get the same. And but otherwise, when you go to start making edits, you start to unravel a big puzzle there. And we can do that, but again, you set yourself up for, okay, my turn, my turn, my turn. And that's only fair for those employees then to say that. So again, what I would say is if the city council were to wish to make an impact to anything here, I would recommend that you restrict that to the implementation process, like we're going to phase this in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or how much money you wish to divert to the picture as a whole. I would request and recommend that we don't go individually by position. I've done that work, and so I would request that we maintain the scale we have here. So, because again, with 300 plus employees, we will never satisfy everybody. That just cannot be helped. I wish I could, but I can't. This is the second time I've done this in. You just can't, and so. So when you go to develop an implementation strategy, how to make this thing happen, I try to look at 3 factors: financial restrictions. I'll touch these a little bit. Half my employees are civil service, and then finally, the plan must impact all employees. So financial restrictions. Obviously, we are paid by taxes. We are paid by rates. We have to bear in mind that again, employee wants this. Ratepayers and taxpayers are willing to maybe pay this. We have to find that middle ground there, and so we have to find a balance there that makes sense. That's why we do this average of the comparables here. That's fair. We're not on the high end. We're not beating out all the communities, but we're not on the low end either. And so we find somewhere in the middle of all that. To me, that's fair, and I think that's fair for the employees and fair for the citizens as well. Civil service under Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 143, the fire and police employees, which is almost half of our employees, just about, they have very rigid rules when it comes to pay that I have to follow. I had to develop a different strategy just for them than I can do for the other employees. It was very rigid. I spent many nights, and Chief McMonagle and Chief Salter can attest to this. I called them several times to try to figure out ways of doing this, and we finally figured it out. And so I really do believe that given how complex and complicated it is, this is probably why people have not tackled this, and because it's hard. And it's a lot of money, but it's also hard to figure out something that makes sense for all employees. Lastly, kind of carrying on from that, whatever I do across the board, we need to be trying to impact all employees, not just subsets, not just the police, not just the library, not just public works, but all departments under the same methodology as reasonably as possible there. And so as we'll get to the bottom numbers here, you'll see that I think I have achieved that. I think I've achieved something that makes sense that, okay, half my employees who are non-civil service are going to be making about this much more, half of them who are civil service are going to be making this much more. It's about the same. And so I'll get to those strategies here in a second. Now, with my proposed strategy here, I feel like I'm solving a lot of problems with our proposed plan here. Currently, we have a long series, about 70 steps, 70 grades, and our positions are just, I will say, subjectively placed on a step. We have steps 1 through 80 or 1 through 70, and then we are just subjectively, okay, we will put library clerk here, and we will put city clerk here, we'll put city attorney here, we'll put the police officer here. It's rather subjective, and as I've seen, my observation has been those tend to change, and I think it's just based off of, there's numerous reasons, I'm sure. I won't question my former managers on this, but there's just no way to treat everyone fairly by doing that, because it's just one large scale that everyone just kind of falls under. So I'm changing that. We're going to have a grade system that's based off the position. This is what a finance director pays. This is what a sergeant is. This is what a paralegal is. And so it's all based off the comparables that way. And now with this too, I've also evened out all the steps. Now we may have had this. I didn't do the math here, but from step 1 to step 8. Even seniority, base pay to seniority 14 plus, I want there to be an even increment. So that if you go from 1 to 2, say it's $1,000. 2 to 3 should be 1,000. 3 to 4 should be 1,000. It should not be 1,000, then 600, then 1,100, then 200. We need to have an even increment of a step plan there. That's not the case in our civil service employees right now. As you may see when you look at the current seniority scales, you will see kind of a jump like this, and then a jump, and then a jump, and then there's never no uniformity. I don't know why that's the case. I have my suspicion on why that could have been, but I'm taking care of all that in this proposal here. We're evening it all out so that there is even steps there. With that, I'm also changing the timeline for working through the steps. Right now, the general employees, it's you get hired, then 6 months step 2, 6 months step 3, then 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. Police and fire, it's like 1 year, then 1 year, then 2, and one's like 1 year, and then 2 years. It's just not uniform. So I would tend to believe that I think we have this hurried up approach because we had low pay. So we want to try to keep someone more than 6 months. So we would try to give them a little higher pay quickly. Well, given I'm taking us to average, we're now there, and so I'm going to the 2 year from the start. And so when you get hired, it's a 2 year because we are now comparable. And so I'm changing it for all positions. For general civil service across the board, it's 2 years per step. Now, at some point in the future, I may go to an annual at some point, but what I would do in that situation is I would not change the min, the max. I would just add in intermediate steps. And because again, I have to be fair to the taxpayer and the ratepayer. I can't add 8 more steps beyond the current max because that's a lot of money. And I know employees will love that, but I have to be respectful of the taxpayer and the ratepayer for that too. And so I'm thinking about that in the future. It should be a relatively budget neutral thing, but I'm not going to touch that right now in this situation here. So. And also, too, what we're solving here is most all positions are at or above comparable, and obviously some are already above comparable. I was not going to reduce them down because at some point, when everyone does their studies, we will then get caught up. So there's no point in us bringing someone down. There is no one who is in far excess of comparable, so we don't have anyone who's making far more than average. It's just if you were a couple $1,000s more than average, I'm just going to keep you there. And so. Now, with civil service, I'm also some things here. I'm going to make sure that no ranks overlap. I do believe, and having talked to Chief Salter and Chief Monaco, and I know of talking to the staff beneath them, a sergeant should make more than an officer. Now, obviously, barring overtime, I can't change that, but otherwise, your base pay and seniority, a lieutenant should make more than a sergeant should make more than an officer, same in the fire, a driver should make more than a firefighter. So what we've done is I've created a scale where it is officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and so forth. And the way I did that was I found what is the starting pay for an officer, what is the opening pay, what is the ending pay for an assistant chief, and then I incremented all the way down. That way when we get to seniority 8 or 14 plus for an officer, it is the same exact increase to starting pay for a sergeant as what you just left from the prior year. It's like $1,200. So it's $1,200, then you go from police officer to sergeant, another $1,200. It is a nice stair step all the way across there. So, and with that, I'm also changing the seniority pay. I'm creating uniformity across all the positions. It's going to have the same seniority pay whether you're in years 2 to 3 or 4 to 5 or 6 to 7, whether you are a sergeant, an officer, or a driver, or a captain and fire. It's going to be the same for those years in service there. It just creates more, it makes more sense. It looks cleaner, it's more easy to understand than having different seniority scales for different positions and different departments there. So one of my attachments that you'll see in here is that cleaned out scale there. So now with this, I'm changing us to a year in rank versus year in department. So every position, when you promote, if you go from officer seniority 14 plus, you're going to go to sergeant base pay year 1. That's still more money than the highest paid officer, but you're not going to jump to year 14 of sergeant. Otherwise, there's no point in having a min. And so the men's need to mean something here. So we're going to do years in rank versus years in department. I talk about seniority levels and also, too, what I'm probably most proud of, and a lot of this here, I won't say most proud of, but one thing I'm definitely proud of here is this is going to make us very competitive for police officers. We're down 14 officers right now, and so pay is an issue. And so what I propose in our budget here is going to make us extremely competitive. Now, obviously, there's more to it than this money. Obviously, there's things to that, but all I can control in that is the pay. I can't control whether your family lives here or not. I can't control whether you're from here, you know the area or not, but I can control the pay. So this is going to make us very competitive. And so, would you agree with that, Chief Salters? So excited about that. So hopefully we'll start refilling the ranks and for the police department. Timeline, what I proposed here for implementing the pay study, again, non-civil service versus civil service. Again, having gone through the budget numerous times, figuring out what is a good strategy here, I'm proposing that we get the non-civil service done in 1 year. So to do that is we're going to be, every position is subject to dropping in steps. If you're on step 8 today, you may be on step 6 next year. In fact, every position will drop 2 steps unless 2 steps makes you be paid less than you're currently. No one's going to be paid less than what they're making right now. So if 2-step drop is less pay, you'll go 1-step drop. If that's still less you're making now, you won't have any drop. And so I've gone through employee by employee, name by name, and figured out a mapping per person, per name, that will allow them to not lose money, but also make it affordable for us so that we can get done in 1 year. I do believe we have good wins right now. We have a great council that's commissioned this, and so I do feel that the time to strike is now, and while we have a favorable council with this, to phase it out over 3, 4, 5 years, it could be undone. And so I do propose that we do this in 1 year for the non-civil service there. Civil service, because of that rigidness I discussed earlier with civil service rules, they cannot drop in seniority levels years. So if you've been here 13 years, you will be paid at the 13-year mark. You will not be paid at the 8-year mark. You got to be on the 13-year mark. That caused me a lot of fits in trying to develop a strategy. And I went through numerous scenarios, but I finally figured out one that worked. And that evening out really helped solve a lot of things there. But we're going to be doing a 3-year phasing on the police and fire, the civil service employees there. So what I did with that is while all the positions have been aged by 2% for next year, because we're using this year's data into next year, for civil service, I aged it 3 years. And so I looked at, okay, what is it going to be next year, 2%, 2%, and where should we be at in 3 years? Because again, I don't want us to be 3 years from now, we're 3 years behind. And so we want to be caught up by the time we get there. And so I did that, and I fronted 75% of that in year 1, because we can do it. We have the money to do that. And so that way, the fire and police employees will see 75% of that growth in the first year. Then it'll be 12.5%, then 12.5%. Now, officer is different. Officer, I'm doing 100% in year one, and for various reasons with that. And so, but with them, they will not see COLAs the next 2 years because they're getting all three in 1 year. And again, that's only fair to all the employees and fair to the taxpayers with that. So, but again, I'm doing a 1 year for non-civil service, a 3 year for the civil service who could not drop in steps. If they could have dropped in steps, I would have done it in 1 year as well. So, my final slide on the pay here is because every position is different and every comparable produces a different min-max, every employee is going to see a unique increase. Again, mathematically, that's just how it works. If you are 30% behind, you're going to see a bigger increase than somebody who's only 5% behind. If you have 4 employees on the same scale, the same position, and the min is 15% behind, but the max is 30% behind, those on one end are going to receive a bigger benefit than those on the other end. I just cannot help that. This is how the process works. In order to maintain the integrity of a comparable paid scale, every employee is going to get a different adjustment. We cannot make adjustments to the scale and still be comparable and meet the objectives of the prior slide there. So now with this, of course, the number that matters the most is the total estimated cost for phase 1, which again, non-civil service is all done in 1 year. Civil service is 3 years. Is what I have in the budget is $790,000 in new pay for the non-civil service, all done in 1 year. Again, it's funded, it's done. It just be your normal increases for pay after that, and $750,000 for your civil service, which is again 75% fronted up front, with 12.5% next 2 years. Again, the budget has that in the works there. It can be funded, is proposed. It can be sustained. And so, now getting to benefits real quick. The consultant, he had no recommendations for changes on most of the benefits. I mean, whether you have 12 days of vacation or 13 or 11, it's all, we're basically in the middle ground for most of them. Now with retirement, I am proposing a change for retirement. We currently have TMRS, Texas Municipal Retirement System, is 6%, 12%. The employee puts in 6, the city puts in 12. I'm proposing 714, which is actually the comparable. It's like a $90,000 increase across the board. It's really a small increase to the budget here, but it accomplishes so much for the employees. I know we heard earlier the issue about the COLA for the retired employees. This will help going forward for our existing employees here. And so that's in the budget here as well. And again, that gets us to comparable. And but again, last comment I'll make here is with this study, with what I proposed here, we will solve a 20-plus year problem that no one's been able to touch. I mean, so and I will say that I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I hate to be the manager that brought this forward to you because this is a lot of money. I know that. And I have stressed night and day over this for the last 4 months, trying to get this thing figured out. But I just know it's right. What's happening to employees is wrong, and so we got to correct this. It's a monster in the room, and so I do believe I know we can accomplish this. And so for our employees there, I'm passionate about that. I'm sorry, but I also know that on the flip side, this is good for the citizens. So we have a constant turnover, and you look at fire, for example. They have a board. It's actually one of their fire extinguishers, and I showed you all pictures of this last year. They have a space there in their office there that has the name tag of everyone who's left in the last 20 years. Chief Monago, how many employees do we have in the fires? Is that 53, 4? 51. And do you recall how many we've had leave in the last 15, 20 years? It's like 60, 70?
We're more than 100% in the last 15 years.
So that is a lot of turnover we've had in the last 15 years. So I have fire trucks right now, when they go out to the call, a combined years of experience of like 5 years or less of 4 people. So that's we need to get ahead of that. We need to solve that problem here. We need to keep them from going to the metro as much as possible. I cannot compete with McKinney, but I can make it a lot harder to leave here. And so right now it makes sense to drive there from here. This is going to make it a lot tougher to afford driving there from here, and with what I proposed here. And so with that, when you have staff who are sticking around longer, we have internal knowledge, we have consistency. It's very critical as we're discussing our code enforcement, from building code to fire code to just code nuisances. You want consistency with that. A revolving door is not good for consistency. So I'm trying to address that as well. And so that's the pay study just in a nutshell. Again, we'll talk more about it in the workshop here, and the consultant will be available. But I just want to kind of hit that. That's obviously that's the biggest part of the budget here. So it'd be a disservice if I didn't touch on that. And so, moving on to the budget here, capital purchases. This is my next priority in the budget here. Also, we have a large number of capital needs we have for our departments, for the city, particularly in utility infrastructure and first responder departments here. So again, through a combination of realigning our expenses for actual values, using the general fund reserve, the CARES funding, and the American Rescue Plan funding, we're able to implement phase 1 of the pay study, as well as keep on buying needed equipment to do the job for our citizens here. Again, last year we used CARES funding. I discussed this earlier. We were able to do the work to funding to be used for purposes like this. So we can buy jetter trucks. We can buy SCBA air filters. We can buy generators for the fire station. We can buy the electric stretchers so that our employees don't have to manually lift a stretcher together. They actually have an automatic lift for that. We can get that done now with this funding here. And again, I discussed the American Rescue Plan funding, which is a generator, the industrial park water lines, and eventually the southern loop of the city there. And again, no expense that is tied to the reserve or the CARES funding of the American Rescue Plan is an ongoing expense. These are all one-time expenses. You should never budget a reoccurring expense like payroll, utilities off of a one-time revenue source. You need to be able to fund that every year. So everything that I proposed will be a one-time thing for those purchases there. Now, our long-term game plan is implement the healthy increases under SB2. So again, you don't want to live on the reserve. So as we implement SB2 the next few years, we will eventually wean ourselves off the reserve as we implement the pay study and get that thing all up to snuff and done. And again, when we do that, always keep in mind the 4-month reserve requirement there. So. Now, page 14 of the budget memorandum contains the full list of capital purchases. Some of these are funded using reoccurring funds. We do have a couple. We have like a mower in parks. We have a couple other UTV mule in there as well. And but the primary revenue source is the reserve, CARES funding, and ARP. And so some significant expenses, and I'll touch on these a little later. The assistant city manager, obviously that is using reoccurring budget. I can't fund that with a reserve, and so I got that into the budget as reoccurring if you so choose to allow me to have that. Water, sewer, street equipment for ARP. One thing I also am planning on doing with ARP funding is I'm going to buy some equipment. I like to also buy a mill and overlay machine, a milling machine and a paver. When you lay lines, typically sometimes they're in the streets. You prefer off over into the grassy right of way, but sometimes it's unavoidable. We have to lay it in the streets. So my argument to the state is I need to repair my street afterwards, and the best way to repair a street is to mill and overlay. We have to patch right now because that's all I can afford is patching. I have lots of phone calls every month, if not almost every week, that say this is unacceptable. Patches don't work. That's all I can do. I'm sorry. And this is the budget I have to work with. I don't have the equipment to do a mill and overlay. And to hire someone, as you know, labor is expensive. So I want to have my own equipment to do it ourselves. Material is cheap. I can get material and we can do it ourselves. And so with that, my plan would be, and to make it clear, and for all those who are listening, I would like for us to use that kind of equipment also on our other streets, to go along and start trying to repair other streets with that equipment there. So now that's where the state may say, time out, and so that's not one of the purposes there, but again, I think I have an argument to make on that, and it benefits the city and the citizens by doing that, and so I want to go after that. If they say no, I got to strike it, and so it just means I'll put more sticks in the ground. Water line extensions, backup generator, police fire EMS equipment, jetter truck. This is also an important piece here. Our current jetter truck, what that is when you have a backup in your sewer line, this truck, it's a claw. This truck comes in there and cleans it out and breaks that blockage there. Our truck is on its last leg. It's as critical to the service we provide to our citizens. Without that truck, we're going to have a lot of blockages, and we'll have to figure out other ways of breaking them. And so we need to replace that truck. It's $120,000, expensive, but that's what they cost, unfortunately. And of course, we would do buy board and get the best price for that. And also, too, using the general fund reserve, we're also going to replace Pat May's intake number 4 pump. As you all know, we have 4 pumps that feed the city from Pat May's. We replaced pump number 1 I think, Doug, this last year. And so we replaced number 1 this last year. Number 4 is starting to vibrate, and so we want to get ahead of that. And so we need to replace that pump. Is critical. We also need to do some repairs in our filtration plant pump down at the water plant. We're starting to get a lot of sediment, and we need to go through and do a thorough cleaning of that and just remove the material and replumb all that. And also Campbell Soup's lift station control, it's like 20 or 30 years old, and so also they are a very critical aspect to our infrastructure. This lift station, this equipment here manages the lift station so that as it fills up, it knows when to kick on and get that dirty water out of there. And so it's 20, 30 years old, so we need to replace that. So that's being funded through the general fund reserve. New positions, I do have proposed 2 positions, but we are also defunding several positions. I'll get that to the bottom there. We are currently advertising for an assistant building official / building inspector. I am basically repurposing some existing funds. We had a position that left us here a while back. I am using those funds I'm repurposing them towards this purpose. I feel this is our greatest need. We need to get plan reviews out there quickly. We need to have more inspectors to be available for construction projects. And also, too, it gives us another mind in the office because, as you all know, we discussed a little earlier today, building codes, they're complicated. And so we want to have more staff involved to help with that process there. So that's a new position we have in the budget. I'm also proposing an assistant city manager. As you all know, my workload, I have a rather unhealthy balance in my life, and so trying to provide the service while also having a family, it's just, I have no time at home. And so I spend a lot of time in the office. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm falling behind on so many things. I mean, a good example is a pay study. If I would have had some help, I probably could have done a little sooner. And so, but I'm constantly behind. Everyone knows my tight schedules. Everyone knows how difficult it is to get a hold of me, how to get a meeting with me. If Deneen was here, she would tell you about my schedule is this one large block of meetings most every day, and I do my work at night and on weekends. And so I would like to request an assistant manager to help remove some of that load and put it on that person here. And so with that, I would actually be assigning several department heads. I have 11 department heads. I'd be assigning several of them to the assistant. Because again, I can't just add another assistant. I can just add another direct assign to me. I didn't accomplish anything at that point. And so I need to offload some work to someone else. And so I do have proposed in the budget, if you approve, to hire an assistant city manager as quickly as possible, preferably. And with this too, I know everyone always thinks, well, you're just adding. Well, yes and no. We've defunded a lot of positions in the budget. Just like last year, we've got so many vacancies. We've been budgeting for them, but every year by year, we never fill them. And so I captured those funds and put them towards other purposes. There's no point to budget for 15 positions when I only can hire 4 of them reasonably. And so we are defunding positions across a lot of departments here. Now, hopefully in time, we can start to build the ranks back up, but we're not going to get done in 1 year. And so I do believe with the pay study that will start to positively impact that going forward. And so as future budgets allow, potentially we can start to add to that. But again, the point here is we're not just adding positions, we're actually taking away a lot. So I don't have a number of that. It's a dozen or more. And so I'm trying to be respectful of the taxpayer with that. And so realignment with line item budgets. Again, as with last year, I recognized last year that we were just basically growing the budget number every year. And so if last year it was 100,000, it's going to be 103,000, then 106,000. What I did, the way I do my budgets is I go line by line. I look at 4 or 5 years of history. What is the trend line? If I'm budgeting 100, but I'm only spending 60 every single year, why am I budgeting 100? And so we would drop that. Likewise, vice versa. If we're budgeting 100, but I'm spending 130 every year, well, the question is why? But if that cannot be helped because of pricing or whatever, I should budget 130. That's what it costs to do that. And so we went through a very lengthy process last year, line by line. We made over 600 adjustments to the budget last year, line by line. Thankfully, having done that, it made this process a lot easier this year. And so I had all my department heads look at their actual data for the last prior years and kind of do their own analysis of the budget through trend lines with that. And so we did that again this year. That did free up a lot of money by doing that. And so again, every year you get better data to work off. So we did free up a lot of money by doing that. Again, another priority here is maintaining operational services. Our primary goal of the budget is to provide the services expected of our citizens of Paris here. City staff, they continue to do a great job of being frugal, consistent, and conscientious of the taxpayer dollar. City staff continue to provide great services under the same operational budget year after year with just marginal increases here and there. If you look through this here, you'll see a lot of lines haven't changed. And so a lot of our operational the budgets did not change. So we only changed those off of actual trends there, if it was warranted. But a lot of our staff continue to do their job with the same budget year after year. The big thing changes usually pay, because that's our primary expense is pay. The staff believe that the line items in the proposed budget through the realignment process accurately reflects the true cost of providing services to the best of our ability. And the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget is designed to provide the greatest amount of operational services to the citizens of Paris while carefully monitoring the impact of the property tax rate and other revenue streams. Last little piece here for the priorities here is obviously trying to stay in conformance with the property tax, with SB 2. Again, this happened 2 years ago. This is a major change to our budget. I've already discussed a lot of this here. Basically, what this is a cap to our property tax growth. So if I raised $8 million in property tax this year, I can raise $8 million plus 3.5%. We are capped with that. And so I've discussed that. That does not affect debt service with that. I would recommend, this is tough, but I'd highly recommend that we continue to utilize that year after year. If it's warranted, of course. I don't just arbitrarily say we got to do it every single year. But just like as you know at home, milk prices, diaper prices, fuel prices, everything goes up. Nothing ever goes down. The same is true for cities. The price I pay this year is not likely to go down next year. We saw that in our chemical bids we saw earlier tonight. Prices change. Just because the city is regulated to try to maintain its costs doesn't mean our sources are. And so we try to be smarter. We try to be better at what we do. But when you do the math, when you look at our total expenditure of the budget, it's like $2,000 per person in our community or less. It's not a lot of money per person. A typical family, $50,000. You got if there's 4 people in that family, that's about $12,000 a person. You take taxes out, it's $8,000 a person. I'm having to provide recreational, public safety, maintenance, operations, utility bills. I'm having to pay all of that a family usually sees, all for $2,000 or less. We're being pretty frugal, in my opinion. So it's not perfect. There's always things we can do better. But I think our employees are doing a great job of stretching dollars to cover the citizens as best as they can. And so property valuations, I discussed this earlier. Again, we don't control this, but the state came in and regulated the appraisal district and said, Lamar County, you're too low. I don't know the reasons why. I'm not here to decide that or judge that or whatever. It's just a fact. This is what they decided. And so the last several years, we've been seeing some increases. I think it was like a 3-year process. The valuations are going up 19%, according to the appraisal district this next year. So obviously our tax rate's going down. That's why we're seeing a drop in our tax rate. And so with that, again, I don't control that. I can't help that. And so that's this way. If valuations went down, my rate would probably go up. So I can have the same amount of taxes to do the services I need to provide. I discussed a lot of that already. Some more analysis in my memorandum here. Our proposed tax rate is 45.373 cents. That does max out to 3.5%. We do have the option for the de minimis rate beyond that. I'm not proposing we do that. Obviously, that would also make the general fund reserve go away. But I'm not proposing we do that in this situation here. So again, I always put this formula in here. You have a $100,000 house. Take that times 45 cents, and it's going to be $453 to the city. Comparing to the other taxing districts, the city collects about 22% of your taxes overall. The schools obviously being the primary receiver of that. The county receives a large amount, and of course PJC. So I know when they pay their taxes, only 22% of that goes to your roads, library, parks, police, fire, everything else you have in the city. Your taxes only pay 22% of that goes to those purposes there. And lastly, with an $8,030,000 property tax levy in the proposed 21-22 budget and 25,000 population, that's approximately $320 per person that we're trying to serve with that money there. So we're trying to stretch dollars again, best we can. Revenue, I show here some of our largest revenue. You do have in your packets here a breakdown of all the revenues. It's under tab 2 in your packets here, but the significant ones, property tax revenue is $8,030,000, sales tax $8,200,000. We've actually been having some great years in sales tax. It's never guaranteed, but our trends have been going up. In fact, when we do the math, the number should be much higher than this, but Mr. Anderson and I, we have the same mentality. We like to be conservative whenever we estimate our budgets for revenue, and so we put 8.2. It should be well more than that next year, but again, you cannot, sales tax is volatile. You never know. Franchise fees is about $3.2 million in total. I list out there Encore, Atmos Gas, and so forth. Our sanitation fee, this is a transfer from the sanitation fund to the general fund, $310,000. EMS and county revenue is just a little under $3 million in EMS funding. And water and sewer admin fee, which is a transfer from the water and sewer to the general fund, is $1.2 million. Other significant revenues we have, sewer fees is $7.3 million, water fees is $8.3 million, and sanitation fees is $1.15 million is our significant fees. And plus you have a whole plethora of much smaller revenues in the budget. Expenditures, I know this is kind of hard to see, it's in your packet. This is a breakdown per department of the budget. You can ignore the proposed 2021 budget. It's actually 21-22. I didn't change that in my tab there. But this is per department. We do have the staff present today. If you so wish to ask any of them a question about their budget, we can do it in a workshop as well. But they're here today. If you like to ask Danny about the water and sewer, or Andrew about the Main Street, they're here today. If you so wish to want to do that tonight. So. And capital outlay, this is very hard to see, I apologize. And so a lot of expenses there. I try to fit on the screen as best I can. It's in your packet there. This is all of our capital outlays, from the assistant city manager to our UTV mule for the parks, to our portable radios and please. We have a generator for fire station number 3, I believe it is. We have some stretchers for the EMS department. We have the jetter truck. We have, of course, the generator. This here just shows all of our capital outlays we have in the budget. Most of that appearing in the CARES funding, the reserve, and the American Rescue Plan funding there. So, final slide. I'm sorry. Here we go. And so I know you want more, but conclusion. Next steps here. The proposed 21-22 budget contains significant edits to incorporate the much-needed comparable pay study, thus moving our employees towards the fair average point with this. With the help of accessing a portion of the reserve, as well as the CARES funding, American Rescue Plan funding, we were able to make some much-needed utility and other capital purchases. The proposed 21-22 budget is in line with SB 2. So then the next steps would be the City Council needs to decide whether we'll have some workshops, when they will be. We'll discuss that in a second here. Q&A, whether it be tonight, individually, you call me, email me, next workshop, next meeting, whatever you want to do. Pepper me with questions. Send me your questions about, Grayson, why is this line $30,000? Why do we need a jetter truck? Grayson, do you really need an assistant? Just all those questions you want to ask, you can send them my way either tonight or later. Working with Gene here, we do have a timeline we have to follow here. Under state law, we have to have certain publication deadlines. We are aiming for the first meeting in September to have our public hearings. We have to give ourselves time so that if we make a change, we have to be able to get that done for October 1st. And so that's why we look for the first meeting in September, like we did last year. And so I do foresee us having a workshop or two between now and the 23rd. Then on the 23rd of August, I would foresee the council then approving a budget to then go to publication if it pleases you. So with that, we have scheduled a workshop for this coming Thursday. Mayor Portugal and I got together about that today, and she's requested that we try to plan one for Thursday. If that doesn't work, we can discuss that today and decide when it will work for you all. We just want to get it on the books. Also, we had to have a 72-hour notice, so we would have passed that if we hadn't done it earlier today. So we have that on the books now so that we can hit a 5:30 on Thursday to just do a workshop on whatever you want to talk about. I can have the consultant there to answer questions about the study if you so wish. The last thing I would just say is what I would request, just for good clarification from my part, is as the council discusses, asks questions, even makes recommendations for changes, I request that there be a consensus. If Mr. Ponkage would like to see an edit, I'd like to make sure there's a consensus before I make that edit. And so I ran that in the past in prior councils. I will hear from one council say, Grayson, we need to add $10,000 here. Okay, is that what everyone wants? Because you're one vote out of 7, and so let's ask that there be consensus or even a motion to help guide me, because I hate to add something and then no one else wanted that, and so that's just what I would request with that. So with that, I'll take questions and questions. I'll try to give answers, and it's a lot of information. I'm sorry. It's just budgets. I try to be transparent with what I've got here. So.
I don't have any questions yet. I'm sure I will.
Yep.
I just kind of barely dipped my toe in the water, but I will say I've been keeping up with the salary study, and I'm glad that you're taking a approach to help us, especially on the police and fire. That's always been an issue, trying to get talent, retain talent, and continue their services. And I think in today's climate, obviously, a lot of communities aren't doing that, so I'm proud our community is investing in our fire and police officers, and we need them more than ever. Mm-hmm. We're in times of odd time anyway, to say the least. So I'm glad that we're looking at that and focusing on that. I also want to see our city staff, employees, water, sewer, everyone involved to be able to be paid accordingly, and it makes us better for a city too. We get to hire talented individuals, and then we've also got talented individuals that have been with us for a long time that obviously have not been paid correctly. And I'm glad that we're having to maybe get that step and push on. And I appreciate you putting together. And what I've seen so far, it's y'all have done some pretty miraculous stuff with the money that we have.
Thank you.
The reason when Mayor Pro Tem Hughes and Mr. Path and I met this morning, we are really under a time crunch. I think 5 weeks from tonight for the public hearing. Is that correct?
Gene, if you can speak to that, if you can discuss the timeline real quick.
And we do have a relatively tight window under Senate Bill 2. It got a little more complicated when the Paris News only started printing physical papers on 3 days a week. So we have to, instead of having 6 days we could hit on the dates, to advertise stuff, that we only have 3. So we had to take all that into factor as well. But no later than September the 2nd, I've got to actually publish in the paper the proposed budget hearing notice and the proposed tax rate notice. So I have to know in advance of that what that's going to be in time to prepare the form and to get it over. And it usually takes a few days advance lead time to get that published in the paper. So in August, basically, the rest of August, we need to have 1, maybe 2 workshops if that second one's needed, and in order to kind of keep to the schedule. The other thing I tried to do is not to have any meeting dates that weren't regular council meeting dates, to hold the number of meetings down, to a minimum, so that everybody can kind of be here. They're used to being here on those regular dates. We have to have 1 special meeting because we can't avoid it because the law requires it. You can't adopt the budget and the tax rate at the same meeting anymore. They have to be on different dates. So where I have the schedule worked, we'll adopt the budget on a regular council day and come back for a special meeting the next Tuesday, the very next day, and adopt the tax rate based on the budget that you adopt. And like I say, in case when we have our budget hearing, if you want to make changes that increase something, we've got to have time to, republish, to have a public hearing on those increases, too. So it's a pretty tight deal. And we're following essentially the same schedule we followed last year to get that done.
Our thinking was, if you want to have a workshop, we didn't want to waste this whole week and it be put off to another week because the weeks are dwindling. But it's totally up to the council. If we don't want to meet this Thursday, then we can meet next Monday or whatever day you choose.
I have no conflict for Thursday. I know that was sent out earlier, but just want to voice that.
I'm fine on Thursday as well, whatever works.
I'm good.
Ms. Knox, Ms.
It's on my calendar already. I thought I told you. I'm sorry.
Okay? It's Thursday then. Thank you, council.
So
Appreciate your dedication.
So with that, anything you'd like for us to prepare in particular for that meeting? I'm going to have the consultant available. If he'll give a little presentation that night. You can ask him questions. But anything you'd like to prepare, like for us to prepare otherwise, I can have the staff again here to answer questions more directly. But if you think of anything, let me know before then too. We'd like to come prepared for that.
Okay. Excellent job. I didn't see anybody fall asleep.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 17, convene into executive session pursuant to section 551.087 of the Texas Government Code to discuss or deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or two, to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect described by Subdivision 1 as follows: Project Mustang and Project Fast Track. B, Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to receive legal advice from the city attorney about 1, pending or contemplated litigation, and/or 2, on matters in which the duty of an attorney to her client under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflict with this chapter. The time is 8:05, and we're convening into executive session.
hanging in.
Oh.
The time is now 9:20, and we are reconvening into open session. No action is necessary. Item number 19, consider and approve future events for City Council and our city staff pursuant to Resolution number 2004-081. Any items for future agendas? Seeing none, I'll ask a motion for adjournment in a second.
Motion
All those in
adjourned.
favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous.
Oh, Jesus.